Hey guys, so today I'm going to be speaking to one-man band N.C Lawlor. N.C Lawlor is well known for his slide guitar style and has filled the streets of Dublin with his music for many years. Recently he appeared on The Late Late Show with Shane McGowan. He's rocked out with Mundy and supported the likes of C6 Steve.
Like for years when I was busking, I was just playing the guitar, doing instrumental music. And then as time went on, busking became more competitive. So I had to kind of up the ante with my sound. So
Right.
it came out of that, and also maybe a frustration of just playing the guitar. And I sort of wanted to feel music more from the body, you know, with the feet, and embrace the physicality of it. So that's why I started to use everything. And that's what informed the one-man band thing.
I would never have thought something like busking would have been kind of competitive, but like I kind of can see what you mean. I guess you're kind of almost competing for a walker's by attention. You're competing,
That's right.
and you're trying to find ways to like bring something new, because if you're playing on the streets regularly, then you want to be bringing something different to your audience.
Yeah, you have to kind of think on your feet quite literally about how to capture people's attention in a very busy city. Um, and at that time also, there was a lot of people using loop stations and, backing tracks and stuff like that. So I just needed to ask myself, how can I make the most amount of noise, musical noise,
Yes.
with the body? And so it just became a very simple kind of thing of, a kick drum and a hi-hat, or a kick drum and a snare. And that was that really. Uh, that's what kind of led me to do that.
Yeah, and like I feel the drums obviously is a very physical instrument, and but I was just saying that I'm not a drummer myself. My sister played drums actually, and I loved going out and like banging her kit, like, and it is very cathartic because you can get your whole body into it, and nearly everyone that I know who gets an opportunity to sit at a kit of any kind, it kind of brings another element of excitement to playing music.
Yeah. Well, it's so physical, so it comes from the body, and we tend to forget when we're playing the guitar that you can kind of, it's just coming from the hands. But when you introduce a more physical intention, then it influences the sound, I think, of it.
Yeah, and did you find that like your set list changed or the way you played changed when you started introducing other instruments?
I did. I found that very quickly I couldn't do without it. So when I was doing gigs, I always had to have that going on. But in a way, it became like a lot of things in music. It became a sort of victim of its own success. That I overused it. Then I became dependent on it, and I only knew one rhythm, which is like 1 2 1 2,
Yeah.
and so everything was in the same time signature and the same key. So I had to kind of relearn how to play just with the guitar and vocals.
Cool. And did you find yourself kind of pushing yourself to do gigs without the rhythm section just to kind of evolve as a player?
I tried, but a lot of the places that I was playing in the bars before the COVID, they were quite noisy places. So, you had to, I became reliant on this pulse of the kick drum, and somehow my thumb was synchronized with that. So that was the bedrock of all the songs. But, I had to learn how to pull back from it too, really.
That's really that's kind of cool to think about because it kind of brings me back to like where blues came from and when blues didn't have um amplification and they had to play in a particular way to like cut through the sound of a noisy bar, and it seems that in some ways that you had to do the same thing. You had to find a way to be heard and for the music to have an effect on the audience despite all the glasses clanking and the chattering and all the rest.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about music and environments, is that the environment always inevitably influences how you play the music. It has a direct feed into that. So if you play on the street, you're going to play in a very different way than you do anywhere else. If you play in a bar or a restaurant or a venue, you're going to play differently again. If you play with monitors, you'll play differently, you'll sing differently. You know yourself from singing it, when you have
Hmm.
monitors, suddenly you kind of think you're emancipated and you can have the full dynamic range of your voice, and it's almost like getting reintroduced to your voice. So environment has a huge effect on how we play music,
Yeah,
really does.
it came up in a workshop I was at last night, an online one,
Hmm.
where we were talking about in-ear monitoring, for example, and about how reliant we become on it because we get so used to hearing ourselves in a particular way that if the in-ear monitoring breaks or something happens, it's like we're relying on kind of like instinct, and we're hoping that all the practice that we've put in will do the job, even if we can't exactly hear what we're doing. So I think we have to be very adaptable as musicians and performers.
Oh, definitely, because I remember years ago, like I did my first gig in the 1980s when I was about
Wow.
15,
Yeah.
and in those days, you know, the equipment and the stuff that you had and the places that you would play, basically you'd have big amps and maybe just a vocal PA, and a terrible monitor or no monitor, um, and everybody just turned everything up. And
Yeah.
inevitably, you could never hear the back line, or you could never hear the lyrics of what the vocalist was singing, and you'd just be deafened by your own sound. But
Mm.
it was just that the technology at that time was so primitive that it was just all there.
Punk rock,
So
just
you had,
throw it out there.
yeah, 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 you had nothing to go on. So the idea of I can't hear my vocals or I can have more reverb on my guitar was just like an absolute privilege. You didn't even think in those ways. You
Yeah.
just turn up, hope they don't throw glasses at you, and play.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah, well, I guess, I mean, I feel like we're really spoiled. Like as years go on, like musicians we're just so spoiled with all the equipment we have now, and all the pedals that we can use to enhance our sound, and the PA systems and the amps and all the rest. Like there's just so much that kind of adds to what is there as a foundation. But I think it's also nice to hear that stripped down kind of version of a set. Do you use many like pedals or kind of sound effects yourself when you're playing?
I've always kind of, I don't know why, but I've always stayed away from having too many
Yeah.
pedals because I don't have a great relationship with technology. And I know a pedal's only something you plug in, but yeah, really, I kind of always just used to, drive the amp, or I don't know. I never really used that many effects, but now I'm kind of getting into them, I have to say, because I'm working on my own in isolation. So,
Yes.
you try to get into them to create a body of sound that is inviting for yourself to play with. But sometimes, in my experience, and I think it's probably true for a lot of guitar players, is that you can become obsessed with equipment and gear, you
Hmm.
know, uh, and you can quickly forget about the music that you're playing.
Yes.
So I think with effects, kind of less is more, as far as I'm concerned, or certainly the type of music that I would listen to doesn't really have that many effects, but they are great, but it's a bottomless pit.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, people can be so obsessed, and you see these guys coming on stage with like pedal boards that have about 30 pedals on them. It's like, do you actually use all them in your gigs? Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, there's pros and cons, I guess.
It's strange with guitar players and equipment, because it's kind of, there's a real masculine sensibility of almost like people with sports cars. When you get these guys in rural parts of any country, and they get a really terrible car, and they put new panels on it, and then they put like a different fender on it, and then they put lights underneath it, and in a way, it's a good metaphor. Sometimes music's like that. You got this really terrible car that can hardly drive, but it's kind of dressed up so ostentatiously that it becomes attractive. I think it's a real man thing to collect gear,
Yeah.
uh, and always the gear equipment is the promise of something new. If I get this delay pedal, it's going to change my sound. It's going to change my intention.
Yeah.
And I think there's a kind of an addiction for musicians to collect gear, you know.
And what would be your kind of muse? What is your muse? Like some people might rely on equipment to kind of guide them in a new musical direction. What's your muse? What inspires you
Um,
and how yeah, where do you start when you're kind of creating yourself?
that's getting more and more complicated for me to identify since the lockdown
Mm.
because I'm not playing live. Uh, it's strange. I kind of even the music that I listen to has become wider and it has no kind of roots in it. It has no sensibility, you know. So I could be listening to Sibelius, and then the very next minute to Charles Aznavour, and then I could be listening to Mark Ribot uh, and Charles Mingus, and I've become kind of very rootless in terms of what inspires me.
Yeah,
I actually don't know.
that's great
One
though.
is yeah, it's very naked, and it's not tied to any genre. I think just really in terms of listening and what inspires you is somehow you identify with the intention of the maker of the music. You know, you
Mm,
identify with the visceral nature of the expression, and you think, well, that has something. I need to visit that place. You know.
yeah. We see ourselves in other people and even in we see our sometimes we see elements of musical styles that we kind of feel that maybe extends our own identity as an artist and we kind of want to go in and explore it and kind of be part of that and see how we can put our own twist on it.
Yeah, that's true. I think any good experience of listening to music is one where you want to go and make your own music. You know, um, it's like if you go to an exhibition of paintings and it makes you want to paint. It's the same as a good gig or a good
Mm,
record or listening experience. If it makes you want to create, then it's definitely a good experience.
yeah. And are you finding that? Because I know most of us will go to a gig and have that feeling. You know, musicians will come away going, "Oh God, I really want to go and do a gig now," or "I really want to like write a song. I feel really inspired." And like, how do you find like obviously with lockdown we can't go to a gig. So how are you finding inspiration online? Is it different? Is it worse? Is it better?
I think lockdown is a strange thing because all of a sudden you can't rely on your last gig. For me, I was gigging every night of the week, uh, so I was always loading my stuff in and out of places and doing 2 or 3 hours of playing, and that felt like it was enough every day, and I was making my living from it. But with lockdown, something strange happened. I don't think just to me, but to a lot of people that I've been speaking to lately. Is it was like it's not just a social lockdown, it's kind of a psychological lockdown where
Mm,
you empty the pool creatively and you see what's left. You get an opportunity to see what have I been trading on all this time.
yeah.
um, and for me, I kind of thought you've been trading on very little, but you've made it go a long way. I had to ask myself the question, um, what kind of music would you like to create? um, what skills do you need to engender to create that music? um, what are your real intentions to create anything? Some serious questions have been asked of myself, at least, and I know other people have been in a similar boat. That what is it really you want to create? Because when you're working as a musician, you get hired for a certain thing that you do, and you can keep on doing that year after year after year. But the daunting and most incredible question of lockdown is what is it you want to communicate?
Yeah.
And how are you going to communicate it? Uh, and that's a really big question, I think.
Do you think that's always that's always the case. Is obviously we're trying to communicate a message, but do you think that maybe this situation that we've kind of landed in is forcing us to be a little bit more planned about it, a little bit more strategic?
I think it can be twofold. There was a sense of panic initially when the lockdown happened, and a lot of people were doing online gigs,
Yeah,
and you turn on social media, and every second post would be somebody with a guitar, and in a room like frantically flapping their wings, basically.
yeah,
I think it calls for a more considered approach. And a more nuanced approach, and is because we only have this digital platform to convey what we're doing. Um, our method of delivery has to be more considered, you
yeah.
know, and or at least that's what I feel. Um, and that asks an artist some very serious questions,
Mm.
um,
Yeah, because maybe,
makes one very uneasy.
yeah. Sorry for interrupting. I was just going to say, I think that like a lot of creative brains are not so organized. We're a little bit more kind of thoughts here and thoughts there. So, I although this whole situation has really, been very difficult and challenging for a lot of people. I think that there's always something to learn from every situation, and I feel like on a creative level, like I'm sure that when this ends, you're going to feel like you've evolved again. Another layer has kind of peeled off, and it's peeled off in such a way because of the situation that we've been in. So there's always something to take from all challenges and struggles, I guess.
There is, I mean, I- countless things have gone through my mind about artists during different types of lockdowns, like Picasso making very dangerous paintings during Nazi occupied France,
Mm.
or Samuel Beckett on the run from when he was in the resistance from the Nazis, and spending 3 years in a small place in rural France, drinking wine from a monastery. Literally his life was threatened, and he had to write 3 years. Um, what do artists do in terms in times like that? I don't know. I don't know how people are handling the current situation. And in a way, it's strange because we have this. I think when we have this digital platform, we develop this sense of that we should, keep on posting or contributing or letting
Mm.
people know what we're at. And I think sometimes it's very healthy to really not know what you're at, you know,
Yeah.
and I think, well, I don't know, I don't know if what I was doing was effective. Will it be effective in the future? And it's a time to kind of clear the board, isn't it?
Do you
You know?
think that because there is definitely like a lot of pressure. I don't know who puts the pressure on us. Like I don't think anyone puts
Hmm.
the pressure on us, but I think it's ourselves. It's like we feel that we need to present ourselves in a certain way and to be, uploading content and all this. And like in a way we do because we need to stay connected with our audience, but I'm wondering if the way you said about kind of not really knowing what you're doing. Maybe like that's nice to share. Maybe you could share that. Maybe you could share like yourself trying to create something and just fucking it up, like just being like,
Well, I think it's probably a good time to share. I think it's the best time, or it's always a healthy time to share being vulnerable in the creative process.
yeah,
You know, because it's very easy to make. You can present an image and a sound and ideas that aren't vulnerable, and people buy it, lock, stock, and barrel. But I think it's good to be creatively vulnerable. It's good to not know your your ass from your elbow sometimes.
yeah,
Um, and I think a lot of work can come out of that uncertainty. And this is a time of further uncertainty. It's not gonna. It's not. It doesn't seem like we're all going to be out gigging anytime soon. You know,
yeah,
so that isolates us, and that makes us ask ourselves the uncomfortable questions.
yeah. I think it's good to. I think I this came up before, but I think it's like it's important to become comfortable with being uncomfortable because that makes us real and authentic. And I think it's in those moments that people look and go, that's when they connect with us. That's when they go, that's real. And I've been through that, or that was literally me last night trying to write a song, or whatever it is, you know. I'm in the same position as that person, and like, and then I think that when you upload yourself being vulnerable, when you get kind of show that to the world, it kind of shows other people that like it's like going back to the whole like we show this perfect side to ourselves, you know, on social media or whatever, like, but there's so much that goes on behind that, and the stuff that goes on behind that is sometimes the more interesting stuff, you know. It's just real.
I would believe so. I think in my experience of people creating stuff is that you know there's great terror behind what people present, and there's great vulnerability, and there's this huge insecurity. You know, it's always there. So, and some of the greatest artists have come from that place and created the most beautiful work. You know, someone like Leonard Cohen, for instance, that
Mm-hmm.
very late stage of his life went and joined a monastery because he just didn't know how to be a human being,
Mm.
and then came back and toured and wrote and stuff like that. You know,
Wow.
it's an ongoing process. I think the creative life, it's not an easy one
Yeah.
because it is concerned with identity. You know.
Yeah. And do you find that you're more creative when you're do you write about what you're going through, or do you write about what you've went through? Like, do you know, some people write when they're feeling sad, and some people write about when they felt sad. Like they
Mm.
what would you say is your kind of approach?
Well, I think it's difficult to write about how you're feeling as you're feeling it. You know, I think that's quite difficult because often when you're feeling something, you don't know until you have the privilege of retrospect what you really were feeling.
Yeah.
So for me, it's that very difficult balance of you know being subjective uh, and being raw, but how do you communicate your emotions in a artistic canon is very difficult. You know,
Mm.
it's I think we all have kind of filters of language or musical styles or musical archetypes that we kind of sneakily hide behind to express ourselves. You know,
Yeah.
there's you find there's very few writers that really give away the whole game in terms of how they're feeling. In
Mm.
fact, I know that if I wrote how I was feeling, I don't think a lot of people would want to listen to it.
You don't think?
It's certainly not me, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so
It's too close to the bone sometimes to be
yeah, I
very
mean,
vulnerable.
sometimes people say, that, you know, they say to writers, like, you know, novelists, you know, write what you know. Um, Show the story, don't tell the story. Um, but there always has to be a little bit of a filter between you and the audience. You know, I always have a saying with writing about oneself is like be an open book, but keep a chapter to yourself. You
Mm.
know, you
Yeah,
have
leave
to.
some questions unanswered because then people will kind of be guessing, and that kind of makes it a bit more mysterious, and maybe leaves it a little bit more broad that more people can kind of relate to it. Do you know
Yeah,
what one person gets from your lyric, another person will get something different depending on their own
yeah,
experiences.
yeah. You want to kind of create a situation where there's it's universal and not so particular to you.
Yeah.
You know, like if we all wrote like a love song, for
Mm.
instance, that we really felt at the time as it was happening, we'd probably sound like a sociopath or narcissist. You know.
Mm. Yeah.
But with a couple of years to reflect on that experience, you might write something a bit more elegant than what your feelings were saying at that time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because your brain is just like, ah, can't really kind of
Yeah,
see anything but what you're feeling, and you don't even understand what you're feeling. So how are you supposed to write about it?
exactly. Yeah. And also, you know, it sounds like a terrible thing to say, but music's not always about feelings. It can be about
Stories and
ideas,
yeah. Hmm.
it can be about atmospheres, and
Yeah.
it can be about abstractions. You
Yeah.
know, you want to invite the abstractions in as well as your feelings.
Yeah.
Um,
you write a lot of you kind of release a lot of like instrumental stuff as well. So like so therefore we're not really thinking about lyrics at all, but like do you have a story behind those that music, or do you have a is there a story behind it, or is there a feeling behind it, or do you just play? Is it just improvised? How, how does that work for you?
Well, improvisation is a funny thing because for someone like me, I can cod myself that I'm creating something new.
Mhm.
Uh, but really, what I'm doing is I am probably remembering an experience of music I've heard previously, and I'm reinviting it into my life. So it's not really improvisation; it's more recollection. You know,
Yeah.
like today, I was messing around in the studio. I've been thinking about. I've been pretty obsessed lately with this idea of making music about remembering an older Europe than we're experiencing now.
Oh, wow, okay.
So it's the idea keeps on coming to me to remember kind of post-war Europe and all the musical flavors and the aesthetics and all of that in that world. And how does it sound? So tonight I did something with that. It's called Last Dance in Gdansk,
Oh, wow.
um, and it's a kind of way of I think I'm improvising, but really I'm not. I'm drawing on sounds that I've experienced before. I'm not creating anything new. I'm sort of embracing a subjective remembrance of things I've heard, you know. Uh,
But isn't
and
that
then with
language? Because music is a language, and we learn a language. We learn English or whatever our language is,
yeah,
and we might write a song, but none of the words in the song are like original words, but we've just put them in a way that expresses what we want to say. Isn't music kind of similar? You're using that language and you're forming it into a way that delivers the message that you want to get across.
yeah, I think sometimes we have to be humble enough to accept that we're receiving a lot of secondhand news musically. You know, um, I'm not saying that there's nothing original. There certainly is, but it's the reinterpretation of what you experience in your musical memory that makes something new. You know,
Mm.
um, and so for me, the idea of improvisation is well, you have improvisation and you have composition, and the both two sides of the same coin. They really are. But culturally, I think most of our musical uh, mode of operation is based on remembering things that we enjoyed when we were younger.
Yeah.
So a lot of musical production is to do with nostalgia. I think is visiting a place that you were very happy a long time ago, and it wakes something up in you. You know.
I wonder if that's to do with age though, or because I don't know about like would someone like a teenager, would they be writing nostalgically, or would they be writing more about, you know, what's what's happening in the moment, or feelings wise, or events wise, or whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of it probably has to do with age, and probably in my case because I'm middle aged. Um, and at this age, my stage of life, a lot of experiences are kind of through the rear view mirror. You start to look back,
Mhm.
um, and definitely musically, you start to look back. You start to think, well, why did I like that, and why did I choose to play this, and what does that mean, and where does that come from? And you'll always source it somewhere in your early life. These things had a quite a big impact. You know,
Yes.
you'll always find it. You'll always root it out. Uh, I think probably when you're younger, it's easier to make fresher music.
Yeah.
Uh, I think as you get older, well, for me and for people of my age and above that, they tend to get very self-conscious, and the freshness is not there as it is in youth, you know.
Mm.
But that's all the way through life, right? That's not just music.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in my 30s now, and I feel there's like different points of kind of transformation as you get older. I think it was like in my I don't know, my mid 20s, and I felt like I was kind of evolving, or there was some kind of transformation happening. I had some kind of enlightenment or something went on with me, and I made a lot of changes in my life, and I was the same person, but I just had like a slightly different outlook on life. And
Hmm.
I'm in my mid 30s now, and I feel like I'm kind of going through that again now. So it's like I think that will just keep happening as we get older.
Yeah, well, there is a theory that every 7 years that you go through a kind of cyclical change, with the cells in your body.
Yeah,
And I
yes.
think married to that is this kind of idea, not an idea, but there's a possibility that you go through an ideological change of, what have I done? What do I want? What's my work about? And as artists, we're very self-indulgent. We always want to know what we are about.
Yeah.
We have this kind of privilege of narcissistic indulgence and
Yeah.
introspection that we're always asking ourselves, like, well, what am I about today? And that changes the whole time. It's thank God it changes, but it always brings up a lot of questions.
Yeah. Like what's it all about? What's the meaning of life and all that?
Well, it does become terribly philosophical, but that
Yeah.
that hopefully informs the music, you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
at some stage.
And then obviously as we get older as well, we're carrying more baggage with us too, more, trauma and heartache and great experiences, happiness, all these different events in our life that kind of mold us into the creatures that we are now,
Mm.
in the present moment. So
Yeah, yeah. And I think also as we get older with music, we discover our limitations a lot more keenly than we ever did. I know that when I was in my 20s, and I had a long break from music, and in my late 20s, I returned to playing music, and I ended up making my living from it. But I didn't really have any skills. I had a bunch of chords and the same old riffs that really weren't mine, and I managed to carve out a living from that. Um, and I still play most of those things. And then as you get older, you kind of think, well, hang on, I don't know about that time signature, or I don't know about this, and you start to discover your limitations, and
mhm.
that can either really terrify you, or it can propel you into more learning.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
It's interesting because I'm guessing just from what you've just been saying is that you're like a self-taught musician, that you didn't go to music college or do your grades or anything like that. So you kind of came up and learned yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, I never had any musical education at school, or there was no music really in my family. Like none of my siblings or parents or anybody play music. Actually, nobody. But so I was kind of fresh off the block, and it was really for me learning from records and tape cassettes and all that kind of old stuff. And there was no
Wow.
YouTube or anything like that. Um, but I was very fascinated by music and taken by it. And now there's all this stuff that just didn't exist before. I mean, I look around me in my own studio. I have so many things that I would never have dreamt of
Mm,
when I was growing up. So many instruments and pedals and bits of technology and microphones. But really, it comes down to the fact of what is it you want to express.
yeah.
Uh, that's really the thing, and it's great with this lockdown because nobody might hear it. It might not yield any fruit, but you still feel compelled to express something.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a strange time. It goes without saying for all of us. It takes a long time for somebody to find their own voice, if ever.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
very much it's very difficult to coach that. And then because of YouTube and because of the amount of tutorials on the internet, people can develop a very high technical skill level,
Mhm.
but they can bypass a level of communication.
Yeah.
You can have a very bad player communicate beautiful things with limited skills, and then you can have a virtuoso player communicate nothing with multiple skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's very hard to ascertain what is helpful in terms of education and music. The other side of that is not to become too romantic and think I don't need any skills. I'm just going to express myself. Of course, there has to be a balance of both. You know.
Yeah, totally. And would you have any advice, or what would your kind of go to be to for someone to help them find their own voice?
I don't think I'd have any advice because I don't think I found my own.
Yeah,
Quite frankly, I actually feel, in 2 years I'll be half a century old, and I don't think I'm even close to finding my own voice.
it's crazy.
Um, it is, yeah, but you have to have something to aim for. You have to have some kind of sign on the road that you're driving towards a horizon line, and as you go to it, it disappears. Um, and you have to have some kind of fun on the way, I guess. The idea of finding your own voice is perhaps a bit of an holy grail. You may never find it, um,
Mm.
but it doesn't mean you should not pursue it. The endeavor itself is probably the gold.
Yeah, maybe it's the process in which we're trying to find it, or it's the process where the magic lies, as opposed to the end goal. Because maybe there is no end goal, because we realistically we want to be constantly evolving. We don't want to be that person who's like, I know everything. I don't need to know anymore. I don't want to listen to any new music. Don't want to like work on my skills. So maybe it's like the magic is in the process. That's where your voice is constantly changing.
Yeah, I think if you can find some point, or if one can find some point with an instrument or with your voice or with a process, even, you can find some point where you kind of feel like you've moved beyond yourself. If you
Mm.
create something that feels like it's outside of you, I think that that's a really good thing. If you can surprise yourself, you know.
Mm.
Um, but the tendency, or at least for me, we tend to rely on things that have been a success for us in the past,
Yeah.
um, and we don't always feel comfortable moving beyond that. And we really have to, you know, we really have to have that sense of surprise.
So tell us about so your main kind of thing is busking, is that right?
Well, it was for many years,
Yeah.
because I live in this very expensive capital.
Mhm.
Um, so I had to busk most days of the week, and I had to gig as well because I always chose that. I always lived on my own. I didn't share houses, so I was always paying high rents.
Mhm.
Um, so I had to do that, and I didn't mind doing it because it was a learning curve and it was a great way to spend time. But then before the lockdown, about 2 years ago, I stopped busking, and I promised myself, well, I'm just going to work in bars and restaurants and venues and stuff like that. And then after a period of years, I'm going to stop that and I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
And it's that old saying is be careful what you pray for, because I got it. And now I'm in a space, in a studio space that I have all the tools and all of the things that I wanted, and I don't really know how to use them. And I don't have the self-discipline to know how to use them.
Do you mean
Um,
use them as in like use the physical to like your instruments, like? Is that what you mean?
yeah, I think once, for me, my experience has been once you don't have a relationship with playing in the pub, and you're just on, and then you gotta be really willing for all the demons to come out, the creative demons, and so like it's very easy to get in the habit of playing live every night
What was one of your
because
oh, sorry, go ahead.
it's just a repetitious thing.
I said, what was one of your favorite gigs that you played?
And favorite gigs, I never had an experience of having a favorite gig, but there's been times when you play, or for me when I've played on the street or at a gig or at a good venue, that you felt kind of outside of yourself
Mm.
for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, that you have this feeling of um, there's no time or space, and you feel outside of yourself, like in a way that you're not in your ego, or it doesn't really matter. You transcend what you're doing, and you're connecting with something you can't see, the audience, and they kind of complete the picture. Like I've always had this idea that the audience is the bow on the strings of the maker, that the audience is that bow, and that's very romantic and cliched, but the maker and provider of the music offers something, and then the audience's empathy with that completes the process.
Yeah.
Working in isolation, you just don't get that. You just don't
No,
get it.
you don't, but I guess we just have to make the most of the situation. And as I said, there's like no matter what situation we're put in, we can make something good come of it, even if it's challenging, you know. Um, but what
We
was I going
have
to
to.
say? If there was one musician you could bring back to life, who would it be?
Oh, that's very difficult. Uh, let me think. Okay, back to life. I mean, there's so many good ones that are still alive.
I know, yeah.
Um, I think, okay, in the last century, I won't go further than the last century. Um,
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll go back hundreds of years,
Mm,
and it would be back on an organ or a harpsichord. Um, I think somebody like Billie Holiday, or
mm,
Nina Simone. Actually, I'd love to.
yeah.
I'd love to hear Nina Simone. I don't think there's anybody more visceral and pedantic and life affirming than that lady.
Yeah, she's
She's
unbelievable.
amazing. Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
see her documentary on Netflix?
I did. Yeah, I
It was
did.
really good, actually, wasn't it?
It
Really
is.
good.
Yeah. I mean, history always gives those people such a huge gravitas, and so it's very hard to kind of to locate what they were doing. But yeah, Nina Simone, Billie Holiday, yeah, those ladies of jazz, really, I guess,
Mm.
great vocals.
And would
I
they
mean,
be?
because you're a vocal coach, so I'm interested in talking to you about the voice at some other stage,
Yeah.
because I think that probably the voice really holds the thumbprint to artistic endeavor and identity. I think the voice is the real teller, isn't it?
It is. It's really interesting because I teach a bit of keyboard as well. Now I only teach beginner keyboard, but I find that the most nervous students are the vocal students, because the voice is such a
Yeah.
reflection on our emotions, on our health, and everything else. We can't. It's very difficult to hide your emotion behind your voice, or if you're unwell, it shows in your voice. But whereas if you're nervous or unwell and you go and play your guitar, it's much easier to hide it. So I feel like because it's such a revealing instrument, the voice, that people kind of feel more vulnerable when they have to sing in front of you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it was the last thing I ever considered when I was playing music was the voice. And that saying that the eyes are the window to the soul.
Mm.
I always think in terms of music, it's really the voice,
Yeah.
and there's many things that one can do with one's own voice when singing. You can affect it so much. You can put American accents on, all this kind of stuff. And it's so hard to find a vocalist that really sings as themselves. But when you find it, there's nothing like it in the world. There's
Mm.
no instrument that will surpass that. I was watching. This is going to sound strange, but I was watching this concert by Andres Botticelli
Okay.
on New Year's Day,
Yeah.
and he was surrounded by the world's best musicians in this place called Portofino. So it's the most beautiful European little sea-fronted village, and the world's best musicians. But what really came across with this guy, this opera singer, is just the whole delivery of his voice was just full of humanity. And when he finished the song, thing where he just smile,
Yeah.
and you'd see his gums, you know, this gummy smile, and you just see the beauty of the voice and the beauty of
Yeah.
the man, actually.
Mm.
And I found it deeply moving. And
Mm.
I was watching it for the first 5 minutes in a kind of ironic way, like, oh, yeah, this is kind of Eurotrash, you know, polished
Yeah.
Ferrero Rocher kind of advert. All these guys with grey hair and young wives and this beautiful port. But when I actually honed into this man's voice, it blew me away. You know, I
Mm.
just thought, wow, that's so pure. That is really coming from some place that only he knows about. You know.
Yeah. I think it's one of the hardest things to do is to connect with your emotions and your thoughts and portray it in the voice. It's definitely one of the things that I think most of my students would struggle with is they'll sing the song what they think sounds good, but they'll forget about the story of the song and the meaning of the song and about, you know, all the different emotions and things that you can express. You know, how many different types of anger there are, how many different ways to express sadness, or how many ways
Mm.
can you show that you're happy or excited. It's not just one way. There's like so many different nuances, you know, in each delivery. So
So you, as a vocal teacher, would you say that a lot of your work sort of slightly tips on sort of therapy in a way?
yeah, funny enough, I think when you're working one to one with students, you know, they become very comfortable with you, and
Mm.
especially vocal students, because they're putting themselves in that vulnerable position where they're allowing you to hear their voice flaws at all, you know, and it's a very difficult thing to do, and a lot of the time they do become very like at ease with you, that they often open up and tell you about their life and different things
Exactly. Yeah.
that happened to them. It's like even years ago I worked in retail for many years, and even as a retail worker, like I'd have regular customers that would come in and they just get to know you, and they'd be dying to tell just a stranger about what's going on in their life, you know. And it's a
Mm.
very delicate balance because you kind of you have to know where the line is too, and most of the time it's absolutely fine, but you have to be very careful about um how you deal with somebody, because you know they could be going through a really hard time, or you know, so you have to be very nurturing of that in the lesson.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it must be a great privilege to nurture that and bring it out of people.
Absolutely. And funny enough, and I'm not the only person who has said this, who is doing what I'm doing, but I actually I was going to go into psychology and counselling and that side of things. And I remember one year I sat down, you know, for the New Year's resolutions and all of that, and I kind of
Yeah.
was like, right, I need to sort my shit out. I need to figure out where I'm going. I need to kind of figure out who I am, what's important to me, and what do I want to do this year. So I went on this kind of journey of trying to kind of figure out what I really wanted, what direction I wanted
Mm.
to go in. So I did things like the Myers Briggs test to kind of analyze myself. Have you ever heard of the Myers Briggs test?
I did hear of it. Is that the personality test?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I did that, and when you know, it was just kind of my way of like trying to figure out my personality type and kind of what means the most to me in life. Anyway, long story short, after a lot of scribbling pie charts and notes and journaling and doing all these quizzes online and all the rest, I figured out my core values in life, you know, and one of the things was that I like helping people, you know, when
Right.
I realized that I love music and I love helping people, and I also had this psychology direction, and I was like, but I can help people and do music in as a vocal coach, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of figured out that I could actually embody all those kind of core values in one job, and I think that's really kind of key for every individual. Um, to kind of find out what their core values are, because it really can help guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a very useful thing, I think, for any music, anybody endeavoring music to do, is that you know, it's what the Buddhists would call the Dharma, is that you know, beyond what you want from music and what you want to communicate, is you try and find out how it helps other people, and what its purpose is, you know.
Mm.
So it's kind of an honorable thing to do. Uh, and definitely with the voice, because it is, I think we both agree, the most vulnerable place is to sing. It
Mm.
really is. It's. I mean, anybody can hide behind incendiary guitar riffs or virtuoso piano or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
when you come to the voice, it's so naked, really,
Yeah.
because it's right at the center of people. You know,
Yeah.
it gets to the
Yeah.
center.
It's crazy. There's just so much in it, you know. There really is so much in it. But I
There
actually
is, there is. I mean, I listen to this beautiful singer probably at the end of every day. I would listen to Joe Stafford,
I don't know who that
and
is
she's a
actually.
beautiful singer. Joe Stafford's great. She's kind of under the radar a little bit, um, because her peers were much bigger than her, but she just has the most honest voice, you know,
Mm.
in every syllable and every intonation and every lyric. Nothing is missed, and it's very transporting.
Yeah.
Uh, it can reduce you to tears quite quickly. It's
Yeah.
great.
I did a workshop a while ago, with a kind of a class, in a course that I'm doing, and they had like three different singers. I can't remember who they were now, but there were three amazing singers. One was like technically brilliant. There was one that was like kind of somewhere in the middle, and then there was one that was not technically brilliant at all. And you were asked,
Mm.
they played like a sample. You were asked, which singer do you kind of connect most with, or do you like the best? And nearly everyone picked the singer who was the least technically brilliant, but the most emotionally um, convincing. Do you know, the person who just was so authentic?
Yeah, there's a great saying for that. There's a great essay I once wrote, not wrote, I read about a sculpture, and the essayist said, crudity is in the form of the thing said and not the thing done. You know,
Yeah,
so expertise sometimes can kind of flatten the emotion, and crudity itself can be the emotion. You know, if it's coming from a broken voice or, you know, a broken heart or whatever, that level of communication can be more effective than somebody that's been to the conservatory of music. You know,
yeah, yeah. It's like trying to get that balance. I think that's the key. It's like trying to find the balance between kind of practice and connection and delivery of emotion and story and all that.
it is. I mean, one of the people that I keep on going back to is Charles Aznavour. You know, the French singer.
I actually don't know.
He's just amazing because, well, he's an amazing songwriter and lyricist, but just the timbre of his voice, you're straight away in the frame of the story he's conveying.
Hmm.
And then dynamically, as a singer, he takes you on this journey that you're kind of flattened by at the end of it. You know, you're emotionally worn out,
Yeah,
and yet you're thrilled by the being worn out.
yeah. It's like kind of like therapy or something. You
It
kind of
is.
feel a bit better, but you also feel a bit worse.
Well, it's kind of cathartic. It brings
Yeah,
all the stuff up, you know, and you have to openly invite that experience in. But it must be great to work with people in the voices. It must be a wonderful thing. Because I
yeah.
know I used to be a guitar teacher, and I
Okay.
lived off that for about 5 years. And all people wanted to do, young guys would come into me and they just want to play fast, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was almost like their intention for the guitar playing was their intention for life. They wanted to, you know, kiss somebody or you know, lose the virginity
Impress someone, basically. Yeah.
everything was fast and demonstrative. But I think if you're working with people's vocals, then you're working with a very delicate, invisible organ in a way.
It
You
is.
know?
It is an invisible instrument, but
Yeah.
the visible instruments. I know you play an array of instruments, and one of the ones that I kind of love is the lap steel.
Right. Yeah.
the one that you play in the lap. Do you want to
Yeah.
tell people a little bit about that, just for anyone who doesn't know who you are, and
Oh,
um,
yeah.
tell people about the instruments that you play and kind of what they're like and all that?
Okay. Yeah. Well, the steel guitar, which would be quite close to the voice, because you don't fret the instrument. You're playing with a steel bar.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that kind of gives rise to a lot of different expressions. But the thing with the steel guitars, it's very rooted in Americana.
Mm-hmm.
So once you play anything on the steel guitar, it's framed instantly into American music.
Mm.
Um, and there's so many different instruments, different types of steel guitar. I have loads of them in here.
I can see a few
It's something I haven't
things
played.
behind you.
Yeah, it's something that I've kind of moved away from lately because I've been trying to create more structure, and the steel guitar is quite intuitive,
Yeah.
but it does cross the line with many genres. You can play jazz and blues, country, and all sorts of things on it. It's still quite a young instrument. I kind of found out during lockdown that I wasn't really that good at it when I actually started to study it and
Okay.
study the techniques, and I thought, oh God, I missed out on the algebra of that instrument because I just kind of went at it, because I love the sound of it. But like I was saying to you here about music and memory, for me, when I was a kid growing up, there was a lot of steel guitar on the television
Okay.
and on radio, but I didn't know what it was, but I was drawn to the sound.
Mm.
Uh, and it took me years and years to find out what that sound was. And lo and behold, I kind of immersed myself in it. But yeah, it's a kind of bottomless pit, really. It's another voice. And you can get quite a lot from very little out of it. But if you want to explore it into its very depths, it can become quite a complicated instrument, especially the pedal steel guitar, which is over there. And that's a monster,
Is
you
that
know.
the kind of narrow one, or is it it looks like a guitar but it's like steel and sits on your lap? I don't know.
It looks like the old-fashioned knitting machine. It's on legs, and
Oh
it's got
yeah.
10 string,
Yeah.
10 strings. It has like levers for your feet and all this kind of stuff, and it's a really difficult instrument to play. I don't think I'll get ever to the bottom of it, but yeah, the steel guitar is that's what I played on the street, which was a lap steel thing, and
Yeah.
people really responded to that sound, and they like it. I think because it's intuitive, and you can play it intuitively, and you can play it you can play with quite a lot of vigor and passion,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, and people respond to that. They really like it.
Yeah, I think the overwhelming theme of our conversation is that um people are drawn to music that's authentic and that really conveys the story that you're trying to tell. No matter whether it's the voice or an instrument, or and even when we look at, like you said, you were talking about the instrument that you said that you'll never get to the bottom of it, but maybe that's okay, because the way you play it is your voice and kind of part of who your expression, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Well, for me, it was my voice for a long time, and it was the voice that kept me in rent and my head above water. But there comes a time to divorce the thing that you love. Also, um,
Yeah.
there comes a time to pull away from that and think, well, I have to now create a situation where I'm kind of vulnerable and I don't know. For me now, that's the piano. It's
I see you
I don't
playing a
know.
bit of that, yeah.
And I have no idea about it, and I'm definitely not good at it. And it's a whole kind of universe of its own. So time to delve into that.
Yeah, it's a never ending journey, and like each instrument that you play kind of will kind of bring you in a slightly new direction, which is kind of
Yeah, it's
exciting, keeps
just
things
another way
fresh.
of setting sail into a unnavigable port.
How can people hear what you're creating?
Well, I've never released anything. I've recorded lots of things, but I never really, I've never really put out an album or anything like that for different reasons. But um, I'd like to. we'll see if I do. I don't know. At the moment, I'm working on a soundtrack for a film
Oh
that's
wow.
been in Ireland. So that's my latest project and my first time doing that.
Is that is
So
it a secret? Is it a secret of who it's for or what it's for?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say what it is, but they're
Yeah.
filming it at the moment, and they asked me to do it. So between now and the end of April, I'll be working on that, which is great because I have to do with this soundtrack everything that I've never done before. So I have to,
Yeah.
instead of like being gung ho and having loads of notes and demanding attention from a bar or a street, I have to really sit back and be very minimal with what I do. So that's an interesting challenge for me. That's what I'm
Yeah.
doing now.
That's really interesting. I can't wait to kind of see what that's all about.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a strange experience because I have to do the whole thing on one guitar and create a story from one instrument. Tell a
Wow.
story with one instrument, and but then for myself, what I would like to do, which I'll talk to you about another time, is I'd like to do some vocal training, and
Yeah.
find out what's going on with the voice
Yeah, and see where you
outside
can
of the
kind of push it.
venue. Yeah. So that's it. I got the soundtrack and I have my daily practice in the routine. What I normally do is I play the piano every morning, scales and stuff like that, and then I go to the pedal steel and then I read for a while and try to write for a while, and that's it. Yeah.
Cool. So you have kind of a routine set out to kind of keep you motivated and keep you moving.
Well, I'd like to present the idea, but sometimes I just sit in the rocking chair and I think, and I don't do anything.
That's okay though. I mean, where do we have to go anyway, right?
But nobody can see me not doing anything on social media.
Yeah, so that's fine. It's all good.
Or maybe that's we should all do that. We should just post when we're doing nothing, and that's
Yeah,
okay too.
totally. We're all the same. Like we all have our days where we feel guilty for not doing anything.